So what we have here is a chain of cute small islands below North America. And here we have very similar cute small islands below South America. Can it really be a coincidence? They even seem to be the same number. And as if that is not enough, in both cases we see straight lines at the exactly same positions, as if huge bulldozer made both of them. So this is the necklace of islands. This is the line. And here, if we zoom in, we see strange stuff on the ocean bottom. And if this is a true radar image, here we have even the traces of those excavators or bulldozers which made this plateau, underwater plateau. But of course it doesn't look like a real radar image. It looks like this entire area has been selected here. Yes, this has been selected. And after that, some sort of distortion tool has been applied here. Means they want to hide something. So it may not be necessarily excavator marks, but probably there is something suspicious next to this regularly shaped plateau. So this episode will be about various curious features of the landscape of both Americas, which I find it's extremely hard to call natural, at least in the sense of the word that most people accept nowadays. Of course, if we take that Mother Nature means a highly intelligent being who has created this environment for us, then I can accept it. But still, most likely, there were other beings helping as well, and probably many of them throughout the ages. So the face of the Earth here in Alaska appears as if it has been scraped by very furious winds. But then when we start looking at the details, it turns out that these winds were also kind of scooping the earth, so they were not winds after all. And it even looks like as if the same gigantic scoop was grabbing earth again and again. Please ensure that you are watching this episode in HD resolution and full screen, otherwise many of the details will not be visible. Now let's see various images from North America, which appear to be quite curious. This mysterious line, is this a canal or what? It is definitely intelligent design, but it goes from nowhere to nowhere, goes across flowing rivers without a bridge, so it really seems to be historic, this line, and yet below it we're gonna see modern infrastructure partially maybe related to an old earth dam. Very weird, very, very weird. Now, Nazca-style lines are found all over both Americas. Occasionally, they also form pictures, maybe not as artistically sophisticated as the monkeys and spiders at Nazca, but definitely the grid line is the same. Basically, the grid continues throughout the two continents and, as we're gonna see in the future episodes, all over the full planet. Very often the modern infrastructure is built on places, junctions of this old grid. For example, here the thick line is 100 meters wide. So these are not small things. Again, we see some piece of modern infrastructure on it. Or it could be that also some of the lines are not even old. Maybe they still build them because they know how the grid functions and how to use it. But of course, the common people don't know. Remains of an ancient dam out there in the desert now. But this has been a river once upon a time, and at that time there were people who were building dams. Again, interesting, where the plateau has eroded all around, there are no lines, but where the old surface has survived, there are lines. A modern airport. But has it been built on the remains of an older structure? This is the old. Probably the old terminals were here. Probably the old terminals were here. Is this another old runway that didn't get a modern airport made on it? The width of the runway here is some 20 meters. And again, so many dams on a river that no longer exists. They are over a kilometer long, each of them. We see some complex, also maybe they were built over time as the river was getting smaller and smaller or something like that. dams. Some figure here. Well, apparently the people who were building these dams lived on the area for a long time, because this is when the river was later on much smaller. They built a smaller dam. Again, the lines connected to the dams. The lines here are 20 meters wide. If we assume that the lines were drawn when the river didn't exist at all, then the line building must have been, and dam building must have been going on for a long time as the climate was changing. This cannot be streets, such complicated wide boulevards where nobody has lived for ages. Again, out there nowhere, really in a deserty place, some sort of traces of who has been doing something here. And you can find thousands of similar examples yourself, probably even much more interesting than the ones I'm showing you. How to find them? Just open any satellite map. Look for regions that are less populated, especially the deserty regions, and you will be finding lots of stuff. This is in the very cold parts of Canada. The lines seem to be partially submerged. Now, if somebody still doubts that some of these lines could be done by the forestry department to keep inventory of the forests, for example, here it transpires that this can't be the case, because would they be transporting heavy equipment to each and every tiny flooded island in this swampy area just to cut a small part of the line? Not also making the grid will be quite difficult. The lines are meters wide. We often see that even they are full of water. And they would also need maintenance as well. These are some photos of them taken from a low-flying airplane. Again, this is in North America. If we want to understand the Nazca lines, we have to study them in their entirety, the entire network all over the world, and not only on the Nazca Plateau. Here, again in America, even a Sri mandala.
This is again in
Actually,
North
a guy
America.
published
If we want to
an
understand
article
the
on
Nazca
internet
lines,
claiming
we have to
that
study
he
them in
did
their
this
entirety,
manually by himself.
and not only
The mandala,
on the Nazca Plateau.
but the story doesn't sound convincing. And as usual, he forgot to take any photos while making it. Now, these are images mostly from California, some from Florida as well. Officially, these are areas which have never been inhabited. Some of them are parts of what is officially called pristine nature reserves. But then, who dug out the grid lines again? And also, do you notice the dots along the lines? I have no clue what that is, but similar dots are found as part of geoglyphs in South America, the area of Titicaca, I believe. Actually, the parts of this grid which are not flooded are repopulated again, and the parts of the modern cities are built on the top of the old infrastructure. This is one of the most puzzling photos for me. These are these very same areas with the flooded canals, and we see these are like old electricity poles. Yeah, looks like that. So, then the question arises, is this obviously damaged grid of canals still in use when there was electricity already? Well, that's very recent. I mean, mass usage of electricity, that's pretty modern. And if not, what are these poles anyway? Was there another electricity? I mean, another electric grid with electricity before the one we know of? There are speculative theories along those lines. Now let's have a look at the elongated, supposedly natural spits of Alaska. Starting somewhere here, the full coastal line appears to be intelligently manipulated all the way to here and possibly even much further. This is the official explanation of how these spits came to be. Dominant waves approach from the northwest, creating elongated spit. Okay, so that's the theory. Now let's look at the reality, the photographs. First of all, besides the fact that the spits look a little bit too elegant, stretching over many thousands of kilometers, to be purely natural, meaning appearing only driven by the force of the tides and waves, but also at places where there is no spit and the coastline meets the ocean directly, we have also a very, very regular shape. We can't blame these precise lines again on the currents and waves, because those tend to cause erosion on the coast, leaving behind a shaggy looking edge. Coast, I mean. Of course, not always. Sometimes even the forces of the winds and the waves can produce very regular looking coastal lines, but those are relatively short stretches. The stretches here are not only thousands of kilometers long, but also they beautifully fit the design of the spits. And there is yet another feature of this elegant looking coastal line of Alaska, which might be able to give us a clue as of the artificial origin of all this coastal line artwork, I would say. And that's what looks like partially submerged harbors. Now, something that looks like a harbor and an actual proven harbor are different things, but I think we have a good chance to have real harbors because a man called John Jensen studied similar looking ruins on the more densely populated coastal parts of America and discovered a good number of massive old ports, which not only seem to be submerged and destroyed to an extent exactly as this spit in Alaska and the ruins around it, but also the ports that he studied are connected with the same grid of lifelines that I've been showing you in Alaska. Do you see the regularly shaped submerged canal? This is not modern. We have inherited this from the people that I call survivors, and he calls them the ancient canal builders, but these are the very same people. The work of John Jensen is really amazing because one thing is to see some underwater channels on photograph, and something else is to become aware of their actual size and dimension. These are truly colossal projects, as he calls them. He also calculated how much would it cost to build some of them in modern currency, and it amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars. As the Amazon forest is being cut down, geoglyphs, which were formerly covered with vegetation and thus invisible, now become visible. It's quite a few of them, and the size is sometimes quite impressive, reaching the height of over 20 meters. Quickly, the geoglyphs were declared a mystery because you see, the population in the past in the Amazon jungle was minimal, so there couldn't have been a civilization to build them, right? It turns out that the last piece of information about the population of the Amazon basin is yet another modern historical fantasy. Even a short couple of hundred years ago, the information in the history books was much more truthful. There were quotes with what the first explorers saw there. As they were traveling with their boats, the banks of the rivers were black with people. It was so densely populated. Those explorers also reported that the natives had very orderly social structure and lived in beautiful cities. And since we are looking at the aerial images in this video, there are strange things underwater as well. But let alone are they historical, do they even exist? Because all the images we get are digital composite images, means photoshopped, but photoshopped what, a real image or fantasy, or what somebody told you to make look like real. In reality, we have more or less satisfactory images taken from the height of an airplane only of the densely populated areas on Earth. About everything else, actually, we cannot find any really reliable information about anything else because the only thing that we are given is computer generated images. Now, for example, these are images that they're telling us are sent from Mars. Are they really from there? I don't know, but at least that's what they're telling us.
I'm going to step off the left now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap. So, I guess you want to do it again. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Korsky.
And more images, all from Mars, allegedly. Even the particles of dust are visible. This is, I believe, a hole on Mars, 1 centimeter wide, so we see the dust even. Such a crisp photography. Okay, so if they can show us Mars so well, then what about our own Earth? Look at this stunning quality. Isn't it fantastic? Superb! And here is where all these high resolution images come from. This is an official computer generated image, of course, of all those satellites that are orbiting the Earth, they're telling us. And you see, you can select each and every of them and it will give you information, everything about the given satellite. So each and every second, all these satellites take countless high-resolution images of the Earth. They are telling us for the purpose of weather forecasting, scientific research, exploration of natural resources, improving of the maps that we have on the Earth, and so on and so forth. And that's why we get these fantastic images. Aren't they lovely? But I've got something even more lovely. Doesn't it look gorgeous? Yeah, only if you don't look into the details. It's not photoshopped very professionally. See, they were pasting the same clouds again and again. But wait a minute. Where is then the actual image? We don't have any actual images at all. That's the truth. And it's not that real images don't exist. They exist, but they spoil them like this on purpose before they release them to the public. Do you see the pattern that they put on the top? For example, here we had a nice aerial image, and do you see the blurry rectangular area? This is not a area without an image. If it was, the edges would be straight. No, this is a image blurring tool made on the top of the crisp image. No chances are taken, and with a thick and non-transparent brush manually, they obliterate shallow water images. And to make it even more difficult to see, whatever tiny remnants of information from the radar images of the ocean bottom they have published, they put this nasty water on the top. Do you see the moving white yellowish stuff? These are not natural waves. This is their beautiful water that you cannot even disable, strangely enough. Some map providers put such dark colors for the ocean that you can't see a thing anyway. This is not a photograph, this is anyway a computer generated, or it is supposed to be computer generated image from the results of the scanning of the ocean bottoms. So colors are attached by the computer. If they were making it really with educational purpose, then why not use colors and contrasts which are actually visible for the human eye? Just look at this monstrous distortion of the image. This is just crazy. And this is how well you can see underwater when the weather is peaceful, and this is the reason for which they blur all the water. No chances are taken. Bing maps tend to keep the older versions somewhat longer, the older versions of the images from the bottoms of the oceans, because the newer ones get worse and worse, obviously worse and worse. But then Bing maps are too dark. To see what is actually on their images, I need to make a copy of them, a video or photographs, then take them through image editing program, and then they become usable and visible. And then the different map providers at the same time give different images for the same region, and you wonder, are these some sort of real images, or some kid is playing with Photoshop and they're posting it as a scientific work? So here two map providers give us a different picture for the same place, supposedly. Of course, I have to make it lighter to even show you the image. In 2012, Google Maps and Google Earth made a major update on the images that we get from the bottoms of the oceans, hopefully. So what they did, not only they introduced a new version, but also they substituted the older versions with the new ones and put an old date on them. In other words, they made it look like as if the older version never existed and removed all traces of it. But luckily, some users of the software program called SAS Planet kept on their computers locally saved copies of the older version. So on the left-hand side, you can see the older version, and on the right-hand side, the modern one that you can see on Google Earth or Google Maps even now. The ocean bottom on the right one, the new one, appears to be suspiciously smooth. This doesn't happen in nature. And interestingly enough, mostly the structures underwater that appear to have intelligent design in the Hyperborean region were the ones mostly affected by this update. Of course, there is no guarantee that even the old version had anything to do with reality, but even the very fact that it is removed in such a sly way maybe gives some clue that it was truthful, more or less. Otherwise, why would Google, a party which is a leader in imposing of this artificial, fraudulent reality upon us would remove it. And of course, the things that got deleted clearly appear to have an artificial design. Two other interesting things are to be noticed on the satellite images of Alaska. And these are the patterned ground, which looks like some sort of fields, as you see right here. And then the numerous regularly shaped lakes. Their official name is oriented lakes. First of all, the fields or the patterned ground. Their side would be, let's say, 10-20 meters. They look quite natural, but what kind of natural forces could have made them? You see, they're fenced with stones. So there is quite few mainstream hypotheses about how these patterns could have come to existence, and they don't sound very good. Like, for example, the stones, due to temperature fluctuations, started moving. Yeah, quite big stones, 20 meters away. And that's like the best they can offer in terms of explanation. Not very sensible. And then, in regards to the so-called oriented lakes, there are published scientific works about them, and in a nutshell, they blame it, of course, on the winds. Some special sort of winds, of course, but I read a small remark that also they found regularly shaped lakes in areas where the special winds don't blow, so those remain a mystery. Okay. So again, no satisfactory explanation. And there are similar things and sites all over the world. Like this is a particularly beautiful one from Bolivia. And of course, there are some geological explanations for some of them, but they are quite speculative and often unsatisfactory. They often sound very childish, but they have to be childish to be published in a scientific publication, because that's the full purpose of this TV religion, as I call it. The main mantra of it is, the scientists said. All this is meant to keep humanity anchored in a childish paradigm of existence. So I see three main points which we need to take into consideration to find out one day what is the actual process by which such regularly shaped things came into existence. That includes patterned ground, stone columns tightly stacked next to each other, like in the case of the Devil's Tower of Wyoming, and also these stone spheres. Initially, the categories that I just listed may appear to be unrelated, but as you look at the images now, you will start feeling the connection between them. So now, what are the things that we need to take into consideration? Number one, this beautiful earth that we live on is not only a product of the natural forces, it was created by intelligent beings and it has been regularly manipulated on large scale. That includes initial creation of everything following an intelligent design, subsequent large-scale landscape refashioning on a colossal scale, of which the Alaskan shore is probably a part, and also distractions by the negative forces, again on a colossal planetary scale, and possibly even mining on a scale unimaginable for us. Then number two, stones can be living creatures. These are again the Trovant stones from Romania. They grow like mushrooms, especially after rain. They multiply. They have families. Sometimes they have temporary flower-like formations growing on them. And finally, number three, natural landscapes can be also changed with the help of waves, like for example sound waves. That is just one of the type of energy waves that can be put at work. You can find many videos on YouTube about how sound can move objects. The main purpose of this entire documentary, The Survivors of Atlantis, is to point your attention to one single fact. Not only we have been lied about our history, actually that's a minor problem. The bigger one is that we also live in a paradigm built up with lies only in the current moment. We don't have the slightest clue what kind of lies are they, because we believe that they are reality. And sadly, this artificial paradigm that we have been boxed in is a nightmarish one, and that's why most people currently on the planet have difficult lives, which is unnatural for a human being. We have been designed to function, to live in harmony and peace. This is the most important thing, the single most important thing that the Great Spirit of the Amazon showed to me, and ever since that I have embarked on my personal journey of replacing the paradigm of lies with the truth. And if you want to come to the true world with me, watching and even taking to heart the Survivors documentary won't be enough. You will also need a pure heart to experience the truth. Because even if I pour on your head from the screen divine knowledge, you will collect it in the cup of your mind, and that will be poisoned with the beliefs that you hear from TV or from other people who watch TV. The poisons from the cup will contaminate the pure knowledge. That's why the road to happiness starts, first of all, with switching off the TV, which seeds lies and negative behavior patterns to those which it hypnotizes. Second, by not drinking alcohol, because that waters those seeds of negativity and fertilizes them. And third, starting a regular meditation practice.